973-7425. Hold on to your shorts. I got it. Where? I had a story pulled. This is so unprofessional, is it not? I had a story pulled up that I was going to. There we go. I found it. It disappeared on me. I go where other wiser radio show hosts probably would not go. I go in directions of where, well, it needs to be said, and nobody's saying it, and I'm really starting to, well, I'm kind of, I'm perturbed. I'm not a financial expert. When I was a kid, my mother is going to be horrified when I say this because I've said it before, and I mean it lovingly. It's just to set the stage for this. That when I was in high school, shares of Apple Computer had fallen to like $16 or $17 a share. I was very interested in the stock market when I was in high school and college and law school and just getting started in my married life. Really, I was in the national small investor group or whatever it was, and you learn to chart stuff out and figure out the graphs and know what the yield is and the PE and try to find the valuable. They had a whole methodology for how you individually could figure it out, and I was totally into it. The individual investor corporation or whatever. I loved it. I wanted to buy, when I was in high school, I wanted to buy Apple computer stock. I had gotten a couple $1,000s in high school graduation money from relatives and friends, and I just wanted to sink it all in Apple. And had I done so, I would be a multimillionaire now. Had I left it, had the willpower to leave it untouched, I would now be a multimillionaire with regular dividends that would essentially set me up for life. And I would be plowing every penny back into buying more Apple stock. But my mom was super suspicious of the stock market, didn't really want me to do it, and wouldn't let me sign up for one of those Merrill Lynch individual brokerage accounts that you can set up sometimes for kids. I blew a lot of the money. I wound up actually getting into college and hit 18 and was able to fill out paperwork myself and did some over time. And I learned lessons along the way. Like, for example, on Sunday mornings, I was such a nerd when I was a kid. I watched David Brinkley. I loved David Brinkley. And this week with David Brinkley, and I would watch him and Cokie Roberts and Sam Donaldson. And I was a kid in high school and then in college, and I kept up that routine for a while. I liked David Brinkley, and then I moved over to Meet the Press when Brinkley left and they lost their way. And I bought, one of the first companies I bought stock in was Archer Daniel Midland, which was a terrible investment, but I bought it because I thought, well, they're advertising every Sunday and they've got an impressive ad campaign. And that's when I realized that the companies that are advertising on those shows on Sundays, they're not actually out to get you and me to invest in them or even buy their products. They're trying to get favors from Washington, D.C. They're trying to get grift from Washington. And my general rule of thumb these days is if I see companies regularly in advertising during the Sunday news talk shows, I tend to avoid those stocks. Like General Electric, for a long time, I'd bought General Electric stock, and I sold it, made a profit, and I'm glad I got out when I did compared to where they are now. I'm not an investment advisor. I'm not giving investments. The point is, I'm not a financial wizard. I now rely on other people largely to handle my investing for me because my bandwidth is related to 5 hours of talk radio a day. But I've paid attention to this over the years. I do some individual investments. I actually just liquidated my whole portfolio for reasons that I will get into, and paid off some debts. And while I am not a financial expert and I'm not a planner and don't take financial advice from me, I got to tell you, I think there's a bubble. I don't think there's a bubble. I know there's a bubble, and more people are starting to say there's a bubble, and I think it's not going to end well for us. And I think that there is so much, what did Alan Greenspan one time say, irrational exuberance. There's giddiness in the marketplace. This is a headline from Politico, clearly not healthy. Markets are giddy about reopening, and that's the problem. This is from Ben White in the Politico. Gas prices are climbing. Home prices are surging. Stock markets keep hitting fresh records as chat room-driven mania draws in giddy investors. The economy and financial markets appear to be pricing themselves for perfection, betting on rapid vaccinations and a surge of consumer spending later this year that will pull the nation out of its pandemic funk. Serious risks are still lurking just beneath the surface. Vaccinations could take far longer than expected. New COVID strains could evade vaccines and spur new lockdowns. All of this could trigger falls in stock prices and other assets and stomp on job creation. But if the dream scenario does arrive, another risk is lurking. A burst of new spending and economic growth coupled with the massive amount of fiscal stimulus in the system, possibly including nearly $2 trillion more under the White House's latest plan, could lead to a sharp spike in inflation that would send stocks tumbling and could force the U.S. Federal Reserve to contemplate raising interest rates to cool the economy. The Goldilocks scenario Wall Street and the White House are hoping for includes a successful vaccination effort and enough federal support to keep millions of suffering Americans afloat until then, followed by an economy that runs neither too hot nor too cold, but there is no guarantee Goldilocks will arrive. Markets are now telling two very different stories. For stocks, it is the best of times. While the Dow Jones Industrial Average hitting yet another record on Wednesday as corporate profits come in fairly strong. Big stimulus remains likely and hopes remain for a strong economy. But the bond market is growing very worried that all of the stimulus and massive deficit spending could eventually bite the economy in the form of faster inflation. The yield on the 30-year Treasury bond climbed above 2% on Monday for the first time since the pandemic began, and the yield on the benchmark 10-year bond hit its highest point since the pandemic began. Interest rates pushed down by the Fed remain historically low, but should they begin to rise more quickly, they could eventually crimp consumers' ability to borrow and dent what are now red-hot housing markets in many parts of the country. Now, let me add another data point here. Twitter stock closed at a 7-year high as analysts cheered not profitability, but newfound swagger. Here's the subheadline at MarketWatch. Analysts seem generally relieved by the company's user growth commentary following its permanent ban of former President Donald Trump. How did it grow? Well, it didn't actually grow a whole lot. It grew 7%. 7% of its user base. Meanwhile, let me put this in perspective here while everyone is so giddy about Twitter. Facebook grew 27% and Snapchat grew 62%, but Twitter grew 7% and everyone is giddy about it having grown even though President Trump has disappeared from it. And now there's Clubhouse. You should know what Clubhouse is. Clubhouse is apparently, you have this device. I'm holding mine up to the live stream camera. There's this device. This device is a little computer you hold in your hands. It's a communications device. And apparently, there's not an app on there where you can actually have voice conversation. And so this company called Clubhouse, or this group has developed this social media Clubhouse. And with Clubhouse, you can get an access to it. They try to make it very exclusive. You have to know somebody who's in it to get access to the Clubhouse. I've gotten access to the Clubhouse, and you can have conversations with Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Vera Wang and famous people. There are some who are incentivized to be there and others who come, and they're hoping to draw other people in with feelings of exclusivity, and you can overhear their conversation. Now, I went to Clubhouse last night, except it was bourbon and cigars and my buddy Philip on my front porch last night where we had a conversation. But this is apparently the killer voice app for something called a phone, where you've already got a phone app. And Silicon Valley is in love with Clubhouse. And then you've got Mark Cuban coming out with an idea for a podcasting app where you can listen to someone doing a podcast in real time and make a phone call to them, like dialing 877-973-7425 and connecting to me here live. Wait, you mean so he's doing radio? Except as podcast. None of this makes sense. There is so much crazy money flying around right now. The stock market is going up. There's not a lot of wiggle room in the economy when it comes either side. You're almost walking up a mountain cliff with drop-offs on either side. And then you've got the moral hazard out there right now. You know, in 2008, 2009, with the financial collapse, the government went in and they propped up a lot of businesses that probably should have died. I can't tell you the number of friends of mine who work on Wall Street, who are in the financial sector, who do pay attention to this, who say this really is the number one issue for them. That the government in 2008, 2009 bailed out a lot of companies so that they would not go Lehman Brothers. And you fast forward to last year when the stock market cratered in February and the government stepped in to bail out everybody again, and they didn't decide who really should have the bailout or not. They just bailed out everyone. And so the government has now created this moral hazard where these businesses that should be left to die in the creative destruction of the free market keep continually, perpetually getting bailed out by a federal government. And so what do? They keep making bad investments. The government throws them a lifeline. And, you know, normally, if you feel like God has saved you from something, you feel like, all right, God's given me a fresh start. I'm going to correct the errors of my ways. I'm going to go a different direction. When the government is bailing out these businesses, they're not looking, all right, I can now extricate myself from the mess and go in a different direction. They're doubling down on the messes. Many of these people deserve to collapse. They're creating moral hazard. These businesses deserve to collapse. And now you've got the cryptocurrency bubble where a joke cryptocurrency called Doge is being skyrocketed by Elon Musk. Most people don't even understand what cryptocurrency is, and you throw in things like blockchain, and you got a bunch of little fringy libertarianish people say, oh, the blockchain, I know about the blockchain. Nobody else knows what the hell the blockchain is, but these people speak on it like it's some sort of gospel message and get you to throw your money in it. You don't even know what you're putting your money in. It's an algorithm. Everybody's controlled by an algorithm, which actually doesn't have a whole lot of value, and at any moment, the government could get involved and send things crashing, but Bitcoin's going to be $100,000. I think I'd rather find a way to get $100,000 than to get Bitcoin and try to convert it out. None of this makes any sense anymore. None of it. Twitter skyrocketing because investors like its swagger. There's no monetization in swagger. The market's skyrocketing because they think an 80-year-old geriatric in the White House surrounded by a bunch of communists is somehow going to stabilize the markets when he can't even challenge the teachers' unions in favor of scientists and open schools. We're in a bubble. We're in a bubble. And I actually have benefited from this bubble. You know, about a year ago, I decided that people are going to go crazy for marijuana stocks because legalization is absolutely coming. It may come piecemeal, but it's coming. And I just sold, my portfolio skyrocketed hundreds of percent. I had one stock that was over 1,000% up from when I bought it. And I had others as well in technology that did very well. And I just decided, you know what? I've got some credit card debt I built up in the last couple of months. I paid off most everything. I've got some outstanding debts. I would rather get myself out of debt and free up my available monthly income to start putting back into savings and go on and take advantage of these gains now that we're into this year and not I can put off the tax payment until next year and go on and do this because this doesn't seem to me to be sustainable. And when you look at this massive spending package from Washington, the consensus of economists is that it's not going to spark inflation. But I think Larry Summers is onto something because it's not really disputable that the government is going to put more money into the economy than is needed to sustain it. Particularly as if they're dumping this much money into the economy, and this is kind of Summers' point, is every month moving forward over the next 7 months, if things go according to plan, we're going to need less of this money, but it's still going to be coming, and that's going to spark inflation. And he could be wrong. And I am undoubtedly going to lose out on some money. But I also want to sleep well at night. and I've amassed this. And oh, I'm it's a mid five figures that I pulled out that I didn't actually invest in. It just grew to that point. And this isn't me bragging. I really am not a financial wizard here, but I'm like me, an average guy with just a little bit of common sense who reads and kind of keeps up with the stocks, was able to build up a individual portfolio like that, not including my 401k and other stocks that are managed for me. And I'm like, this shouldn't actually be. I should not have been able to get this amount of growth in a year in the stock market. And yet I did. And other people are doing it as well. And either there's going to be a big cash out soon, or there's going to be something coming calamitous soon. It just seems like, and a whole lot of people are going to be in a very bad spot. And then you know what's going to happen. The government's going to want to bail them out. And again, more moral hazard, which just keeps perpetuating the cycle. The bubble Twitter and Clubhouse, none of this makes sense. And I'm ready for some rationality. And the best way for me to have gotten rationality is to say, you know what, I'm going to go work on paying down my debts, growing this radio show, building something other than an app that is basically a group chat by voice, like a phone call to a party line. But all the hipsters and Silicon Valley people think it's the next great thing. Nope. I'll leave my Clubhouse on my front porch.
You can follow Erick around social media at EW.
Hello there, it is Erick Erickson here. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. They are in Noonan, Georgia. The Frost family, they're friends of mine. Good Christian family committed to the conservative cause, and they love helping businesses grow. Right now, there are a lot of banks out there that they're just telling you, no, your business needs access to capital, and I'm talking access to large amounts of capital, $500,000 and higher, and they're saying no. And the Frost family, they've been doing this since 1993. They want to help you get to yes. If you go to firstlibertyga.com, firstlibertyga.com, you can find all their contact information. You can reach out to them, spend 5 minutes with them. They may not be a good fit for you. They help with larger lending solutions, $500,000 and higher. But they may be the perfect solution for you, and they're local, and they make their own lending decisions, so you don't have to worry about bank bureaucracy. And they're very creative in the way they can structure things. They're very good at it. They've been doing it for a long time. So if you are in charge of a business and need to grow, and you need access to capital, lending decisions, and you're running into troubles with banks, or you just want to actually deal with real people instead of a bank bureaucracy, go to firstlibertyga.com. Also, we just picked up 5 more stations. We are all over Southeast Georgia now. We are in West Georgia now and headed into Southwest Georgia. If you want to advertise across the state of Georgia, we are the only show that is in every corner of the state of Georgia, and we are happy to build a relationship with you as we keep growing. Very excited by the stations we have just picked up, and more coming. More on that later, but reach out to us. You can go to erickericksonshow.com, and we've got contact info there. You can reach out to me, Erick at ewerickson.com, and we'll work with you. We love our advertisers, and we love to spread the news of good businesses across the state of Georgia. I just, I'm this is so self-serving here, but Charlie and I, we started this just over a year ago now. And we're now 17 stations across the state. I think we'll be at 20 in the next couple of weeks, somewhere around there. And we're starting to have to ask ourselves tough questions. How do we be a Georgia show that's also in markets outside of Georgia? And I think I can do that. I can relate Georgia stuff nationally. I want to get into national syndication. We're headed fairly rapidly in that direction. It's great now to start having advertisers coming in who want us to advertise on a more national audience, but still I'm sitting in my home studio in Macon, Georgia right now. Have no desire to move to New York or Washington or the big cities when I think it's possible to grow a national audience from right here in Georgia, where I continue to be. I appreciate the kind words and the encouragement over the years, and now suddenly we're picking up stations. If you want to be a part of it as an advertiser, let us know. We're happy to work with you. Yeah. When we come back, did you know there may be a travel ban to Florida soon? Hi there, it is Erick Erickson. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. The insanity, if you're just tuning in, the very first half hour of this show, I spent focused on the insanity that is the stock market right now. It's no longer the exuberance in the market, given all the data that's out there and the policy positions that are coming. It to me, and I realize I'm not an expert, but I do pay attention to this stuff, and it feels bubblish to me. The fact that a guy who really isn't an expert, can outpace the market as much as I have this past year, none of it makes any sense to me. And it also, the COVID policy is something else. Nothing seems to, it's like insanity has taken over public policy decision making. So here's the White House is looking at domestic travel restrictions. This is from McClatchy. Now, McClatchy, you do have to understand, is the news network that also maintained Michael Cohen went to Prague and has refused to retract that story, even though we now know for certain that it did not happen. So you do have to keep that in mind with credibility here. But the Biden administration is considering whether to impose domestic travel restrictions, including on Florida, fearful that coronavirus mutations are threatening to reverse hard-fought progress on the pandemic. Outbreaks of the new variants, including a highly contagious one first identified in the United Kingdom, as well as others from South Africa and Brazil that scientists worry can evade existing vaccines, have lent urgency to a review of potential travel restrictions within the United States, one federal official said. Discussions in the administration over potential travel restrictions do not target a specific state, but focus on how to prevent the spread of variants that appear to be surging in a number of states, including Florida and California. There are active conversations about what could help mitigate spread here, but we have to follow the data and what's going to work. We did this with South Africa. We did this with Brazil because we got clear guidance, one White House official said. But we're having conversations about anything that might help mitigate spread, the official said, referring to discussions about new travel restrictions. The UK variant, known as B.1.1.7, has recently surged in Florida, where over a third of all cases in the United States have been identified. Two federal government officials underscored that no policy announcement were imminent and that any move to restrict travel or impose new health measures would be taken in partnership with state and local governments. Why are they singling out Florida? Florida, a government that is Republican with a governor who's done way better than New York City. I mean, even the New York Times data shows how much better Ron DeSantis has done than New York's governor, but you've got to be anti-data to think otherwise. And then there's the other data we're not paying attention to. In 2 weeks, the percentage of cases has fallen 36%. The number of deaths down 22%. The number of hospitalizations down 27% nationally. The number of the 7-day average right now is 104,000 cases in the nation. You got to go back all the way to the beginning of November to get something comparable to that, to November 6th. We're trending in the right direction. State cases continue to collapse. More and more things are going down. Deaths are beginning to decrease while there's the spread of variants. States are leaving fewer vaccine doses unused. Through Tuesday, every state but Rhode Island had reported using at least 60% of doses they received. 5 of the 10 metro areas with the highest rates of recent cases are in Texas, and even Texas is in decline. The only 3 states where the cases are higher and staying high are Alaska, Vermont, and South Dakota. Every other state is going down. Georgia is falling fairly significantly. Florida as well is falling significantly. There are no states where there is an increase. There are an increasing number of states and territories where the virus is low and going down. In Georgia right now, there's a 43% decrease in the last 14 days, a 27% decrease in hospitalizations in the last 14 days, a 4% decrease in deaths in the last 14 days. At least 117 new coronavirus deaths and 3,403 new cases were reported in Georgia on February 10th. Over the past week, there's been an average of 4,044 cases per day, a decrease of 43% from an average 2 weeks ago. If you take the New York Times data, we've got a 7-day average of 4,300 cases in Georgia. To get anywhere comparable to that, you've got to go to December 4th. In Florida, they've had a 29% decrease in cases, a 5% decrease in deaths, and a 21% decrease in hospitalizations over the last 2 weeks. Things are trending in the right direction. And by the way, they don't really have an explanation for why all the declines are going down. They've got guesses, but they don't have them. But meanwhile, the irrationality of public policy is coming to the forefront. When you're thinking of travel bans to Florida because of DeSantis' success there, here's the New York Times. The Texas doctor had 6 hours. Now that a vial of COVID-19 vaccine had been opened on this late December night, he had to find 10 eligible people for the remaining doses before the precious medicine expired in 6 hours. Scrambling, the doctor made house calls and directed people to his home outside Houston. Some were acquaintances, others strangers. A bed-bound nonagenarian, a woman in her 80s with dementia, a mother with a child who uses a ventilator. After midnight, and with just minutes before the vaccine became unusable, the doctor, Hassan Gokal, gave the last dose to his wife, who has a pulmonary disease that leaves her short of breath. For his actions, Dr. Gokal was fired from his government job and then charged with stealing 10 vaccine doses worth a total of $135, a shun-worthy misdemeanor that sent his name and mugshot rocketing around the globe. It was my world coming down, said Dr. Gokal, said in a telephone interview Friday. To have everything collapse on you, God, it was the lowest moment in my life. The moment of Dr. Gokal is playing out as pandemic-weary Americans scour websites and cross state lines, chasing rumors, all in anxious pursuit of a medicine in short supply. The case opens wide to interpretation, becoming a study in the learn-as-you-go bioethics of the country's stumbling vaccine rollout. Late last month, a judge dismissed the charge as groundless, after which the local district attorney vowed to present the matter to a grand jury. And while the prosecutors portray the doctor as a cold opportunist, his lawyer says he acted responsibly, even heroically. Everybody was looking at this guy saying, I got my mother waiting for a vaccine, my grandfather waiting for a vaccine. They were thinking, this guy's a villain, says the lawyer, Peter Doyle. Dr. Gokal immigrated from Pakistan as a boy and earned a medical degree at SUNY Upstate Medical University in Syracuse. After working at hospitals in central New York, he moved to Texas in 2009 to oversee the emergency department at a suburban Houston hospital. He included rebuilding homes and providing medical care after Hurricane Harvey. In recent years, he split his time between 2 area hospitals. When the pandemic hit, he lived for a month in a hotel and in an apartment rather than risk infecting his wife, who has pulmonary sarcoidosis, a disease in her lungs. I was petrified of going home. The Harris County Public Health Department recruited him in April to become the medical director for its COVID response team. The job paid less, but he was eager to protect his wife. On December 22nd, he joined a conference call in which state health officials explained the protocols for delivering Moderna. The 10 or 11 doses in the vial are viable for 6 hours after the seal is punctured. Dr. Gokal said the advice was to vaccinate people eligible under the Category 1A, healthcare workers and residents of long-term care facilities, and then those under 1B, people over 65 or with a health condition. After that, just put it in people's arms. We don't want doses to go to waste. On December 29th, a mild Tuesday, Gokal arrived before dawn at a park in the Houston suburb of Humble to supervise a vaccination event intended mostly for emergency workers. In part because of minimal publicity, the pace was slow, with no more than 250 doses administered. But this was the county's first public event. They knew there'd be hiccups. Around 6:45 at night, as the event wound down, an eligible person arrived for a shot. A nurse punctured a new vial to administer the vaccine, which activated the 6-hour time limit for the 10 remaining doses. The chances of 10 eligible people suddenly showing up were slim. By now, workers were offsetting the darkness with car headlights. Gokal did not want to waste a single dose. He asked the event's 20 or so workers who either refused or had already been vaccinated. The paramedics had left, and of the 2 police officers, one had been vaccinated, the other declined. He called a public health official in charge of operations to report his plans to find 10 people to receive the remaining doses and was told okay. He called other high-ranking colleagues whose parents and in-laws were eligible. They weren't available. The hours were counting down. The doctor figured if he returned the open vial to his department's almost certainly empty office at this late hour, it would go to waste. So he started to drive to his home in a neighboring county and called people in his cell phone's contact list to ask whether they had older relatives or neighbors. No one I was really intimately familiar with. I wasn't that close to anyone. When he reached his home in Sugar Land, waiting outside was a woman in her mid-60s with cardiac issues and a woman in her early 70s with health problems. He inoculated both, 8 to go. He got back in his car and drove to a Sugar Land house with 4 eligible people, a man in his 60s, a man's bedbound mother in her 90s, his mother-in-law in her mid-80s with severe dementia caregiver, or mother-in-law with dementia, and a wife and mother's caregiver. He drove to the home of a homebound woman in her 70s and administered the vaccine. I didn't know her at all. 3 remaining doses. 3 people had agreed to meet the doctor at home. 2 were already waiting. A distance acquaintance in her mid-50s who works at the health clinic's front desk, and a 40-ish woman whose child relies on a ventilator. As midnight approached, the 3rd would-be recipient called to say he wouldn't be coming. So he gave it to his wife. And now, this is insane. He's in trouble. Do you know, my wife and I were both very fortunate from lucky situations to be able to get the vaccine. And every pharmacist I've talked to has said that they're advised, do not let it go to waste. Find people who need it. And I recognize, admit, fully acknowledge that by virtue of having this radio show and talking about my wife's and my health condition, people knew about us. And so we were easy targets to be able to get it when no one else could. Now, we did not jump in front of other people. We didn't jump ourselves. But when there were extras, a missed appointment, an extra dose that there was no one scheduled to get and no one else wanted, we were able to get it. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what the pharmacists are supposed to do. And now this guy is getting punished for this. They say he stole the vial. They say he abused his position. But he says no one from the DA's office ever bothered to contact him. No one in the DA's office ever asked his side of the story. The nurse was willing to admit she did puncture the vial and there was no one around to take it. And then you've got in California an outdoor exercise ban at UC Berkeley. Listen to this. UC Berkeley has banned outdoor exercise and extended dorm lockdowns after more than 160 people tested positive for the virus. 164 people tested positive. 95% of the cases came from undergrad students, 5 faculty or staff members. So they've literally banned you from going outside to exercise. You are not allowed to leave dorm rooms without approved permission, including using assigned bathrooms, seeking medical care, getting food, or getting tested for the virus, which occurs weekly. You're otherwise shut in, and you can't even go outside to exercise if you go to UC Berkeley. When being outside, we don't have, by the way, we don't have data showing the virus spreading in open air. Remember the beaches in Florida? Everybody's outraged about the beaches in Florida. We can't find cases that come from people going to the beach in Florida. And then there's this. There's a company that has 30 million N95 masks and can't sell them. A year into the pandemic, the disposable virus-filtering N95 mask remains a coveted piece of protective gear. Continuing shortages have forced doctors and nurses to reuse their N95 masks, but Louis Arguello Jr. has plenty of N95 masks for sale, 30 million of which his family-run business, Dimitech, manufactures in his factories in Miami. He can't find buyers. After the pandemic exposed a huge need for protective equipment and China closed its inventory, Dimitech dived into the mask business. The company invested tens of millions of dollars. But demand is so slack, he's preparing to lay off 1,300 workers. And yet, there's a vast shortage. Now, I know something about this company. And the amounts that this company has been able to sell overseas. This company has been trying to make it into the U.S. market, but they're not 3M. They're not 3M masks. So a lot of American companies didn't want them because even though they meet all the certifications, they're not branded 3M. And now you got the Biden administration that's not putting the science ahead of the teachers' unions. Even Jake Tapper CNN is calling him out on this, that he's not listening to the science. They're not actually changing any of the policies from the Trump administration. They say they're changing them, but they're setting goals that the goals have already been reached by the Trump administration, and now the Biden administration is taking credit for them. We have a rationality in the markets. We've got a rationality in COVID. It's like crazy town has come to town. Our lives are being run by elites who are as bat poop crazy as the election truthers. The stock markets are being driven up by a bunch of people who they're using it as a casino. They're not using it to build wealth over time. They're using it as a casino. And they too are involved in this cult of personality tribalism. Elon Musk throws a stock out on Twitter and the stock skyrockets. Nobody's using their brain anymore. They've outsourced their brain to other people. People want to be told what to do. People are lemmings. And on both sides, it's not a left-right thing. We're seeing this everywhere. Whatever happened to common sense? Good gracious. This is not sustainable.
You're listening to the Erick Erickson Show.
Hi there, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Gina Carano is out at the Mandalorian, and this is a thing. This one frustrates me. It frustrates me for a variety of reasons here. I'm actually a big fan. My daughter only is willing to give the Mandalorian a shot because she is in there. She was the fighter turned actress who has had a compelling run in the Mandalorian. And I said Gina Carano. Gina Carano has been fired by Lucasfilms because of a tweet that essentially compared the conservative plight in America through cancel culture with the Holocaust. I don't agree with her tweet. I don't. I think she should have been smart enough not to do it. But when you look at so many Hollywood actors and actresses who say way more outlandish stuff, who don't get canceled, it's ridiculous that Lucasfilms would cancel. Particularly, they've been giving into the woke crowd for a while now. They've ruined the Star Wars franchise. The Last Jedi was terrible. The Rise of Skywalker somewhat made it redeemable, the franchise, but it wasn't. Here comes the Mandalorian, a fantastic property, and Disney is perfectly willing to allow left-wing actors and directors to behave badly and say things that are offensive to a lot of people and turn a blind eye to it. But here comes a woman who is under sustained attack from the woke crowd. In large part, it started because she refused to put her gender pronouns in her Twitter profile. She is a decent person, a fine actress. And yes, she had a couple of tweets that make people squeamish that I don't think she should have put up. But is it really fireable given the amount of things Disney's put up? And this is the problem here, is the left will now say a lot of people will cancel Disney Plus in retaliation. Left will say, oh, well, see, you're in cancel culture too. Can you not react when Hollywood elite, when the elite in this country engage in canceling someone when they would give more latitude on the other side? And this is part of the problem here, is it is objectively painfully obvious, if you're willing to pay attention and be intellectually honest, that someone on the left in Hollywood can say something outrageous, outlandish, offensive to people on the right, to conservatives, can make a Holocaust comparison, and they'll be continued to be propped up. Sean Penn is a great example of this. Or Josh Wheaton is a great example of this. There are plenty of examples. And, Pedro Pascal he's the Mandalorian. Pedro Pascal is the Mandalorian. He compared the United States under Donald Trump to Nazi Germany in concentration camps. He did it on June 20th, 2008. And he hasn't been punished. He hasn't been canceled. But she has. There is clearly a double standard. Clearly a double standard. And yeah, I think conservatives are going to have to find a way to respond in some way. Whether you stop watching The Mandalorian, you cancel Disney Plus or something, it's clear the left and Hollywood and the cultural elite of this country are so completely stacked against you, they can hold a double standard, and then they can attack you when you get upset about it. She doesn't deserve this treatment. Does not deserve the treatment. And it's offensive to me that anyone would defend what Lucasfilms did, particularly after they've largely destroyed the Disney franchise anyway. and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number you want to join me, it is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I'm going to, well, I got to start with the story. Man, I get up every morning and outline where I want to go, and I never follow it. And, oh, by the way, there's breaking news. Jobless claims are at 793,000. Layoffs are high, but the good news is that's down slightly. Still terrible. I want to read you a story. It is a journalistic article. Kirsten Willis is the reporter. It's at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. This is everywhere. They have thankfully updated it now after I ridiculed them on social media. It's a weird little change. I got to read you the story, and just bear with me here. And because I don't like to read long form articles, and I've been doing it lately, and it bothers me. I shouldn't be doing it, but there's a point here. Please just listen to this. Paragraph 1. Information on whether or not eggs are healthy for you changes often, and a recently published study has offered more insight into whether or not eating lots of them is good or bad for you. Paragraph 2. Research published Tuesday in the journal PLOS Medicine shows that eating just a portion of an egg, which includes the cholesterol-containing yolk with half the food's protein and the majority of the nutrients, can increase the risk of dying from a variety of causes. According to CNN, those causes of death include cancer and cardiovascular disease. Paragraph 3. Whether consumption of egg and cholesterol is detrimental to cardiovascular health and longevity is highly debated. Data from large-scale cohort studies are scarce. This study aimed to examine the associations of egg and cholesterol intakes with mortality from all causes, cardiovascular disease, and other causes in a U.S. population, researchers wrote in the abstract. Paragraph 4. For the study, researchers analyzed more than 500,000 participants with an average age of 62.2. They were gathered from 6 U.S. states and 2 cities between 95 and 96. The majority of the participants, 91.8%, were non-Hispanic and white. The study was long-term, and participants were followed up until the close of 2011. Paragraph 5. Findings show that the overall mortality risk increased by 7% for every half an egg additionally consumed each day, according to CNN. Paragraph 6. According to the study, participants who ate egg whites or egg substitutes had a lower all-cause mortality and mortality from cancer, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and respiratory disease than people who did not consume those foods. Paragraph 7. There were 129,328 deaths, including 38,747 deaths from CVD during a median follow-up of 16 years. Whole egg and cholesterol intake were both positively associated with all-cause CVD and cancer mortality. In multivariable adjusted models, the hazard ratios, researchers stated in the article. I got no idea what the hell that means, but paragraph 8. While scientists acknowledged the limitations of the study, including that it was observational and relied on self-reporting for participants, even though there were adjustments for admitted dietary and lifestyle risk factors, researchers concluded consuming eggs and cholesterol were linked, albeit indirectly, to greater overall causes of death, including along with cardiovascular disease and cancer. Paragraph 9. The increased mortality associated with egg consumption was largely influenced by cholesterol intake, they wrote. Our findings suggest limiting cholesterol intake and replacing whole eggs with egg whites, substitutes, or other alternate protein sources for facilitating cardiovascular health and long-term survival. And then the 10th paragraph. It is one sentence. Still, experts are skeptical. I use the egg infatuation in the media as a way constantly to remind you how the media gets science wrong. And in the 1980s, the egg industry was almost ruined into bankruptcy by a sustained campaign of shoddy pseudoscience that said that eating eggs was bad for you and would kill you and lead to heart attack and cholesterol and the like. And then it turned out those studies were debunked. And the egg industry came back with, the ad campaign, the incredible edible egg. Now, let me read you this one from CNN. Forget what comes first, the chicken or the egg. The more important question is, are eggs good or bad for your health? Unfortunately, science can't seem to settle on a definitive answer to that either. Just last year, a large Harvard analysis of 215,000 people found that eating one egg per day was not associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, a new study of over 500,000 people has found eating even a portion of a whole egg with its cholesterol-laden yellow yolk increases the risk of dying from all causes, including cardiovascular disease and cancer. In fact, the overall risk of death went up by 7% for each additional half of a whole egg eaten per day, according to the study. And then here, at least you get, how far is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs in, but they're all very short. Experts were skeptical. The study results are problematic because they only asked people once about their egg consumption, then followed them for many years without checking to see if their diet had changed. The conclusions of the study are overblown, said Ada Garcia, senior lecturer in public health nutrition at the University of Glasgow, in a statement. Blaming eggs alone for an increased risk of cardiovascular disease is a simplistic and reductionist approach to the concept of diet and disease prevention. Now, again, I need to now state something here. The AJC didn't do a good job here. Here CNN is doing a better job. Let me again highlight this. The study results are problematic because they only asked people once about their egg consumption, then followed them for many years without checking to see if their diet had changed, and then presumed that it was the eggs that did them in. This is why we can't have nice things. The media wants to hype the salacious. The media wants to hype the stuff that, well, it's bad for you. And the media these days, because of environmentalism, more often than not goes out of their way to highlight studies that paint anything related to the meat and poultry industry as bad. You got to be a vegetarian or a vegan better. And so any study about butter being bad, they're going to highlight it. Any study about beef being bad, they're going to highlight it. Any study about eggs being bad, they're going to highlight it. Over and over and over and over, they're going to highlight it. And they cause people to be skeptical of the science. There is, I would venture to say, there is a direct relationship between this sort of news coverage of a shoddy study and people's skepticism of the vaccine for COVID and wearing masks and all the scientific research on COVID. So the CDC has come out with a now largely definitive study that shows if you're wearing a good-fitting mask around your face, you're probably not getting the virus. You're at least not inhaling it. Loose-fitting masks still offer you some margin of benefit. This is where the double masking comes from, that if you have a mask and you put another cloth mask over it, you got a surgical mask with a cloth mask over it, it turns out that it actually is very preventative in helping you not get the virus or actually transmit the virus to other people. It has way more to do with people transmitting the virus than actually receiving the virus, because you know that if the virus particulate gets into your eyes, you're going to get it. But why should you believe how the media covers any of this? The media is now bullying people over not wearing masks at all. Remember, they're showing up at grocery stores and the like, harassing people. It is sensational. It is salacious. It is overly hyped. It is overly blown. We've been hearing the dangers of eggs. You know, in the 1980s, when I was a kid, I remember all the constant drumbeat of studies on. There was at one point questions about drinking milk as well. Should you drink milk? And maybe milk is bad for you. Maybe milk is really making you fat. Maybe we need to stop all of this. And the drumbeat just kept on and on and on and on. Maybe just wild craziness. Maybe stop highlighting these things. There are all sorts of hand wringing constantly in the media. How do we cover this? How should we cover this? And they can't help themselves. And I wanted to start with the AJC. They've gone back. I pointed it out on social media early this morning that you had to go all the way down to the bottom of the AJC story to get that experts were skeptical of that egg study. They have now taken that sentence and they put it at the very top in large letters since I called them out this morning. They haven't noted an editorial change to do that, though. They've just done it. But why do people in the media, this isn't for you guys, I realize, but I know who listens to me. And do you people in the media not understand why so many of us are skeptical when you trot out these stories? My buddy Brent is texting me right now. The butter versus margarine stuff, for years there was a transition to margarine, and there was actually an entire industry built up to promote margarine as a healthier alternative to butter. And guess what? It turns out butter is actually better to use than margarine. And for years, the media ran with it. Margarine. Don't you use butter? Turns out butter is better. It is actually better. And the whole idea of the ingestion of fat is different. The whole thing are crazy, silly. And I genuinely think that maybe you should stop listening to the salaciousness of the media when it comes to these sorts of studies. And how do you get truth here? So I follow a couple of guys online. One of them, a nutritionist. You know, I've been going to the gym, but it really does come down to diet. I'm learning that. I'm trying to eat more protein. And I follow a couple of people. And one of them, his basic rule of thumb is live your life. Eat in moderation. And if you need a Big Mac, go get a Big Mac, as long as it's not your primary meal source. Go get it. You need one on occasion, get one. You want a Whopper from Burger King? Go. Otherwise, eat a lot of protein. You should actually eat more meat, not less meat. Eat your vegetables and your fruit. And his advice to me was actually, it was kind of funny. He said, look, you can pay me to be your nutritionist, but you need to eat a salad a day and 2 pieces of apple a day, or 2 apples a day. Drink water, and otherwise live your life. And if you can do that for a couple of weeks, then come back to me. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. You're not really committed. I talked to another guy, and he says, you know what? Stop running. You don't need a Peloton. Lift weights, do squats and deadlifts, build those muscle groups. You'll increase the amount of fat that you're burning just by building muscle mass. And then eat a lot of meat. Eat more protein. Both of them are like, pick your goal weight, whatever your goal weight is, and eat that many grams of protein a day. And it's just, you got to exercise. I actually enjoy going to CrossFit now. So I go to this place in Macon, Towel Training. It's over on Northside Drive, and they just moved over there. Great guy runs it. I can go in. I actually pay to go in when nobody else is there, so that I don't have to get involved in talking about politics. And it's great. I love the exercise. I'm healthier than I've been. I can definitely tell I'm building muscle, but now I got to work on the beer and pizza diet, which is unfortunate because beer and pizza are 2 of my favorite things. And I got to work on it. But, I'm learning that, gosh, I can go grill a steak and eat a steak. And actually, contrary to what all the people screaming about online are, that protein is actually good for you. Go eat it. Eat chicken, too. I do an Omaha Steaks endorsement on my evening show. I actually get from Omaha Steaks. They've got frozen chicken breasts that they pre-slice very thin for stir fry. Can do that. It's great. But giving up on the chicken, giving up on the egg because the media says so at this point, if I read a study from the media, particularly on nutrition, my first reaction is you people are full of crap. And I think I'm going to stay that way. And probably you should too.
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now at 8
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. It is 24 after the hour, and the phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Oh, man. Nick, perfect timing. Welcome to the program. Nick from Dallas. I was literally just about to talk about this, and I turned to see who the call was, so perfect timing.
Okay, yes. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this because I can't figure out if he has taken away their ability or their means to protest, or if this is just the ultimate protest. What do you think?
Yeah, well, so for those of you, Nick is talking about Mark Cuban and the Mavericks. They're no longer going to play the national anthem, although they are now. The NBA told them they had to, and so now he's in talks with the NBA. I honestly, the way I looked at this, it's funny you should ask it that way because I would look at it as him trying to get out of the protests, that it does more harm than good for the business if they're taking a knee to the national anthem. So just stop the national anthem and they no longer have the ability to protest on the floor. Now, a lot of conservatives are looking at it as, oh, he's anti-American. Cuban isn't anti-American. He's genuinely say what you will about Mark Cuban. The man makes a lot of money. He knows what he's doing. He's not anti-American. I disagree with him on this idea, Nick, but I actually think what he's doing is he is taking away their ability to protest on the court.
Okay. Can I make one other comment?
Go for it.
Okay. In regards to the whole butter margarine debate, I had a great uncle who lived into his 80s, and he would not eat a biscuit unless it was made with lard. So what is that?
Yeah, I mean, people want to avoid the genetics issue stuff. And most of my family, they all live into their 80s and 90s, and none of them had great diets. So I'm not super concerned, although I would like to be less fat these days. So I'll just eat more meat. Yeah, thank you for that, Nick. But to this Mark Cuban thing. Mark Cuban doesn't want the national anthem played at the Dallas Mavericks games. Conservatives pals. I'm somewhat fascinated with Mark Cuban. I don't always agree with him. He is definitely of the left, but he is largely libertarian, it seems like to me, on a lot of policy issues. And he does, if you ever hear him talk, he recognizes that the NBA does have a problem with China, and China is a problem. I don't think he always gets it right, and politically, he is definitely to the left of me. But I also find him actually rather intriguing as a person because oftentimes he does get it right in the cultural commentary, and it gets overlooked by other things he says and does. He's definitely not on my side, but he's also someone I find worth paying attention to. And my first reaction when I heard he was going to get rid of the national anthem at Dallas Mavericks games, which the NBA won't let him do, is that really what he's doing is he's trying to get rid of a source of protest, that it does them no good when fans don't want to come to the game because the players are protesting. So much of the commentary about the Super Bowl, for example, was about the wokeness of the commercials and the preachiness of stuff and the protest, and people want to get the politics out of it. Well, one way you get the politics out of it, get the national anthem out of it, doesn't give them a platform to protest. Now, he can say, well, I'm just getting rid of it because it's contentious and the players don't like it, but I interpreted it that way. I think, the irony here is if they just stop doing it, then people going to the games, would they even pay attention to that? If they just play ball, would people know as opposed to making the announcement? I don't know. But I'm not a Cuban hater, and I know a lot of people just seem to be. And I'm actually intrigued more often than not by the people who I don't really always agree with, but I always find they have something worth saying, and I would put Mark Cuban into that. I think that sometimes if you just shut up and listen to a guy like that, you can learn stuff even if you disagree with him. And so much today, we are not allowed to just shut up and listen to people we disagree with. You got to actively hate them, and that's just not of me to do. And I'm just fascinated by the guy.
30.
But we need to move on. The citizens arrest law in Georgia is going to be overhauled. Brian Kemp has made some proposals. It is highly controversial, and he's in a no-win situation, but we're learning that Brian Kemp kind of gets himself in these situations and he stands up and fights, whether you like him or not. And I kind of appreciate that about him. Hi there, it is Erick Erickson. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. The citizen's arrest law may be updated here in Georgia. The governor's office, according to Greg Bluestein and Maya Prabhu at the AJC, is preparing to unveil a proposal next week that would overhaul the citizen's arrest law. Here's what the plan would do. It's a 150-year-old statute. The new version would include protections for law enforcement officers and private businesses to detain lawbreakers, while also addressing concerns that say it's systematically abused and disproportionately targets Black Georgians. The law came into focus because of Ahmaud Arbery. Local prosecutors declined to charge the men because of the citizen's arrest law. After the video, it was clearly shown that they had disregarded the citizen's arrest law and didn't really have this knowledge they claim. Current state law allows Georgians who believe they have witnessed a crime to arrest the suspected offender if the crime is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. If the crime is a felony and the person suspected of committing it is trying to flee, they're allowed to arrest the person upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Now, Governor Kemp is kind of in a no-win situation with this because the Democrats have decided we've got to get rid of the citizen's arrest law altogether. But then there is the contrarian streak of conservatives in the legislature who say, one person abused the law, they still got caught, we don't need to change the law at all. Philosophically, my position is when you have a 150-year-old law, maybe it is time to update it to current standards. And the governor seems to think that he's willing to tweak it. Now, there is a problem with the law as to what actions can a person take when they're trying to arrest someone. We don't really want citizens to be proactively going out trying to arrest people, holding them at gunpoint. We shouldn't want that. We shouldn't want to take the law into our own hands. Sometimes it's necessitated because, frankly, law enforcement can't show up immediately and the like. And we've got to proceed in reasonable ways. I don't know exactly what the law change is going to be yet. What the governor wants to make clear is that if someone is trying to shoplift in a business and the business detains the person, that the business will be protected and that law enforcement on duty and off duty will be protected. The larger question is, what is this going to do about individuals? My guess, and I don't have any insider knowledge here, but I genuinely think that this is probably where we're headed, is where what's going to happen is that they will protect individual homeowners. If someone is breaking into your home or your property and you engage in a citizen's arrest, you'll be protected. But if you're trying to essentially be Dog the Bounty Hunter and stop someone breaking into someone else's property, you're going to be dissuaded from doing that. Now, the fact of the matter is they can't really punish you if you detain someone who, let's say I'm sitting on my porch and someone breaks into my neighbor's house. I call 911 and the police aren't there yet. And I get over there and I'm able to detain the people. You're not going to get punished for that. I couldn't support the change if you could. I mean, the situation with Ahmaud Arbery was there was a rumor that some black man was breaking into homes. Ahmaud Arbery had been caught on a Ring camera looking at a property. Nothing was stolen from the property. He was out jogging through a neighborhood and they captured him and killed him. They were not eyewitnesses to the crime. They were not there. That was not immediately within their knowledge. I mean, for example, you didn't have someone running on the street pointing at him, screaming, he's stolen, and they stop him. No, they put two and two together, assumed it was him, and stopped him. I don't think that they complied in the current law. So, but if you can give more clarity to the current law so that local prosecutors can't hide behind it to help their friends, I don't have a problem with that either. Let's give a little more clarity to the legal situation. I'm okay with that. Now, you may want to chime in on this. You're more than welcome to. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. There's also something else that's happening that, man, on my evening show, I talked about this on my evening show yesterday and had a guy call, very nice guy. He was perplexed as to why I could support this. Georgia leaders want to give $1,000 bonuses to most state employees. It would be $1,000 bonuses to more than 57,000 state employees who earn less than $80,000 a year. These employees are employees who essentially it'll be federal dollars transferred to Georgia. It won't be your state taxpayer dollars doing this. It will be national taxpayer dollars that get it done. And I don't have a problem with giving these individuals $1,000 bonus. Now, let's do a history lesson, shall we? I've mentioned before the crisis of the 3rd century, the Roman emperors and the like. One of the things that kept the Roman Empire from collapsing at the time was the Roman bureaucracy. The emperors may have been killing each other, the military holding coups and the like. There may have been a plague spreading through the empire, the western and the eastern portions of it. But the Roman bureaucracy was actually highly, highly competent. It was not the corrupt bureaucracy. In fact, the bureaucracy was very good at purging corruption for a while. Not at all times in the Roman Empire, but around this time, the Roman Empire was highly proficient in its bureaucracy, in tax collection, law enforcement, operations, infrastructure building, and the like. They did a good job. And it kept the empire going at a time where at the upper echelons of the empire, there was complete chaos. And the reason was because if the emperor was godlike, you were essentially serving God by serving the empire. By serving the empire, the highest and best use, the chief end of man, was for the glory of the empire, for the glory of Rome. And so the best and the brightest went into the bureaucracy. They were paid well, and they took care of the empire because it was a religious calling almost to take care of the empire. Edward Gibbons, in the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, blames Christianity for the collapse of the empire. Now, a lot of people read this as him being hostile to Christianity, but he actually makes a very valid point. When Constantine became the emperor and Christianity became accepted, the elite rapidly converted to Christianity. I mentioned the other day, it was actually the rural parts of the empire that took the longest to convert, but their conversions were the most authentic when it happened. It was the cities where conversion was easy, but they wanted access to power. And if the emperor is Christian and you want to go to the Christian emperor's court, well, you better be a professing Christian and you better be able to sound like it. So the conversions happened easily in the cities, but they stuck in the countries. The cities are always the first to abandon the current for the new trend because they want access to power. It's kind of like we see with wokeism today. It's the cities where wokeism happens because the intellectual elite in this country have embraced wokeism, and so the cities are embracing wokeism for access to power. When that fades, you'll see it rapidly in the cities disappear, while the rural parts of the country maintain Christianity. I digress. So when the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, what is the chief end of man? The first question of the Catechism. What is the chief end of man? It's to glorify God and enjoy him forever. Christians have this doctrine of vocation where they are to glorify God in all that they do. But if you're supposed to glorify God and not the empire, well, maybe we should not be focusing on propping up the empire. We should be focusing on God. After all, you've got Augustine coming along saying there's a city of God and a city of man. And you want to serve the city of God. You don't want to serve the city of man. So the best and the brightest who had been for centuries going into the empire, because the chief end of man was the glory of the empire, now suddenly the chief end of man is the glory of God. So the best and the brightest, they're leaving the imperial bureaucracy. They're leaving behind a life of serving the empire to go serve God. So you've got a guy like Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan. Genius, absolute genius. And he goes off and becomes a bishop and winds up getting Theodosius, the emperor, to essentially put the church ahead of empire by forcing Theodosius to have penance for a slaughter. You've got a guy like Augustine in North Africa who people make pilgrimages to hear him. You've got Athanasius as well. And all of this is about the glory of God. So the sharp minds, the brilliant people, the Tertullians, the Irenaeuses, the Ambroses, the Augustines, the Athanasiuses, the Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus. They're no longer building up the glory of the empire; they're building up the glory of the kingdom of God, and the imperial bureaucracy just collapses over time. And Edward Gibbon says that this is contributed greatly to the collapse of the Roman Empire. I philosophically believe that we should pay a good wage for people to go into work for the state. And I'm okay with this bonus. And this is all a roundabout way of getting to yesterday at a caller who just couldn't understand, why would you support paying state employees more? I don't support paying them competitively to the private sector because I think the private sector does better than the state. But I also don't think we should pay so little to state employees that we only get the dregs of society to work there who can't get a job in the private sector. There are trade-offs. You may get paid less in the state. And, in Georgia, because there is an aggressive unionization among state employees, you can get fired as a state employee more easily than other states. But you do have really good benefits, even if you don't get a big pay raise. You do have more flexibility in vacation, even if you don't get a ton of pay. You do get all the state holidays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get a good and largely stable job with a guaranteed source of income. What you don't get really are a bunch of pay raises. You don't get elaborate pay structures. You don't get a lot of bonuses. And so a lot of people will go work in the private sector. If I had to guess, and I don't know, but my guess is when you take out outside of the correction industry that is heavily male, my guess is that overwhelmingly you got a lot of women who work for the state. And I don't mean that sexist. I just mean they have more flexibility to deal with kids. They've got a pretty stable income system, and they got good benefits, and they get all the holidays that their kids are going to get in school. But we should also take care of those people. I take care of my employees here. I try to. I have yet to get a paycheck on the show just because I'm trying to grow the show. So every penny that I bring in from advertising revenue, I'm pouring back into the business to pay a good wage to my employees, to build up the profile of the show, to try to connect with people for interest in the show, to grow the show, expand the show, and all of that. And I can do that in the private sector, and I don't want the state to take more money than they need to so that I can actually grow my business. And over time, I will be profitable enough that I will be generating enough revenue that I'll be sending taxpayer dollars to the state. And I don't think the state should be paying elaborate wages to employees when I myself, in my employment situation, would like the best and the brightest to come work for me. And so I'll pay more. But the federal government sending the state a pile of cash, and we can use it to pay $1,000 bonuses to people who work for the state who make less than $80,000 a year, and they haven't gotten cost of living increases. They haven't gotten bonuses lately. They haven't gotten anything other than budget cutbacks. I'm totally okay with it. I hope you'll be as well. I'm kind of appalled to see some conservatives, their immediate gut reaction is attack, 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 attack. Listen, this is a bad idea. No, I don't think it is. And again, I don't think we need to pay the highest wages in the public sector. I think it's irresponsible and a bad use of taxpayer money. But I also don't think we should pay so little that we can't get good people to work for the state. At some point, you need competence within the bureaucracy, even as we don't like the state bureaucracy. You do want to try to find competent people to run it, or else, God help you.
You're listening to The Erick Erickson Show, the perfect...
My goodness gracious. Okay, we got to move on. I don't know who this is. One of you who's listening right now in Macon, in Bibb County. I know it's Bibb County because it's it's 478-621 number. One of you just called my office and left a voicemail, and your voicemail is me talking on the radio and you clearing your throat, and no one ever talks. I don't know who you are, but one of you just called my office, the 800 number, and left a voicemail for my assistant. And the actual voicemail was me just talking about the Roman Empire and you clearing your throat listening to me on the radio. So I thank you, whoever you are, for listening to me on the radio. But you also did just call, essentially butt dial my office so that we could hear me talking on the radio on WMAC. The phone number, if you'd like to call here and talk to me, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. A Georgia angler has accidentally broken a 25-year-old state record. He reeled in the wrong fish. This is according to the Department of Natural Resources. Christian Blake Jones of Swainsboro. We're getting on the radio down there on WJAT. Christian Blake Jones of Swainsboro was trying to catch crappie. Instead, he got a hickory shad. It was bigger than any previously recorded in the state. He told officials he was on the Ogeechee River in Emmanuel County when he got unlucky in a good way. That area of the river, it's in eastern Georgia between Macon and Savannah. The shad was confirmed at 2 pounds, 3 ounces. The previous state record set in 1995 was 1 pound, 15 ounces. The world record is also 2 pounds, 3 ounces. His catch is even more impressive in knowing hickory shad only appear sporadically in the lower parts of coastal rivers. So the species prefers the Atlantic Ocean, but migrates into Georgia's coastal rivers to spawn from January to May. They can grow up to 4 pounds and live for 6 years. He didn't say what he was going to do with the fish, but congratulations to Christian Blake Jones. That's pretty impressive. I was actually, I'm a buddy of mine, my buddy David Cannon. He's a great outdoor photographer, loves fly fishing, and took me to Ocmulgee Outfitters in downtown Macon day before yesterday to start buying fly fishing gear. He is intent on teaching me fly fishing. I have been inundated by emails from listeners on WCHM up in Clarksville. Now, those of you listening, those of you in management up there, y'all listen to me for a minute. I realize I've got a lot of stations and we don't know. I mean, it's hard to gauge how many people are listening. I assure the owners of the radio station that y'all got some listeners, because I have gotten nonstop emails since yesterday about coming to Clarksville and going fly fishing. And I have so many invitations to go fly fishing with so many people up in Habersham and Rabun County now. I'm at some point I'm going to have to do this. I can't wait to get my second round of the vaccine so I can start going back up there. In fact, I gotta go up there and like find a restaurant or something and just say, hey, I'm going to be here. I'm safe to come hang out with now. Come have a beer with me. But I'm going to have to go up there and fly fish now because I got so many people emailing. You kind of get a sense sometimes. This is one of the cool things about radio. It really is kind of personal. Y'all do kind of get to know me, even if I annoy you sometimes. And it's just nice to know when sometimes you're not sure how many people are really listening to you. And then you start getting all these emails from people from one of the markets saying, hey, come fly fish with me. Hey, I know this river. Apparently everyone in Habersham County is a fly fisherman too, which I'm learning. So I'm going to have to get up there. I stayed up at this place at the waterfalls. There's this great golf course. Nick Saban, please don't hate me. Nick Saban owns the golf course up there at the waterfalls on Lake Burton. And I stayed at a villa, and I'm trying to get back to it because it's just gorgeous. And there's those restaurants in downtown Clayton are phenomenal. I have not eaten in downtown, although the brownies at the place in Clarksville were amazing. But like a sit-down meal, I haven't except in Clayton. I love that part of the state. And then I got to go over to Rome as well because I got listeners who want me to hang out in Rome, and now I got listeners in Brunswick. I got to tour the state at some point. When it is safe to travel again, I will, and I'll bring my fly fishing gear, and I'll be that embarrassing fat guy in the water who doesn't really know what he's doing and gets tangled, and y'all can all laugh at me, but I'll be there for you. Now, when we come back, I have not talked about impeachment. I have not wanted to talk about impeachment. And yesterday on social media, I pointed out I have not talked about impeachment. And other than in passing, we've had just a little bit. I haven't really spent a lot of time on it. And I was lit on fire by blue check mark snobs who are horrified that I do not care passionately about impeachment. So I'm going to talk about impeachment at the beginning of the next hour. And y'all are all going to be mad at me. Every single last one of you, left, right, and center, will be mad at me. And that's fine. You can be mad at me, but you'll know I'm right.
30.
I just see no point in being exhaustive about the subject when there's so much other stuff going on. And I'm learning that the Biden administration is taking advantage of the distraction of impeachment to do all sorts of stuff that probably they shouldn't do, including wanting to impose a travel ban on the state of Florida, really because of Ron DeSantis more than anything else. We'll get into all of that when we come back right here on the Erick Erickson Show. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of this here program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Delightedly, one of the crazy things about doing the show now is that I am on a bajillion PR promo lists where people, like, there's one, do you want to talk to a Democratic strategist about impeachment? Do you want to talk to a Republican strategist about impeachment? Here's my new favorite. Let me just read you the subject here. Manscaping and womanscaping, how the pandemic changed personal lawn care. Twice as many engaged and married people as singles maintain a well-manicured garden. For women, most prune their armpits. For men, it's of course their face. We don't need to. How do you get on these lists? I got my God help me. And here's the you want to know the punchline to this? This is a website about lawn care. It's not even related to manscaping and womanscaping. It's related to lawns, including such articles as best lawnmowers for 2021. Most romantic gardens in the United States, and on it goes. Wow. Okay, so now we can move on. Just the PR list. I don't know how you get on the PR list. I got no idea. I'm gonna start here, and it's gonna sound a little self-serving. Just bear with me. I'm learning. So let me start with ads. I got asked to do an ad for CBD oil, and I am skeptical, and I know some of you are not, but I am. It's like aromatherapy oils, essential oils and stuff. It's like the Christian Ponzi scheme. I know people who make a lot of money selling essential oils. I know people who believe in it. My wife uses essential oils. I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold on CBD. I have tried it. It sounds nope. It doesn't do anything for me. And so I don't want to advertise for something I don't believe in. I advertise for Omaha Steaks on my evening show. I think we're about to pick them up for here too. And I'm actually a customer. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm a customer of theirs. If I want just to get a package of bacon wrap fillets and chicken breast stuff, I'll go to Omaha Steaks. If I want higher end stuff that I can't necessarily get from Omaha Steaks, I'll go to Porter Road or Snake River Farms. But I believe in the product. I use a Quip toothbrush, and so if you listen to the podcast of the show, you'll hear me talk about Quip. I use Quip. I actually am a user. Everyone in my household has a Quip toothbrush. I like them. For a while, I was doing ads for Harry's Razors, but some left-wing group complained that I was too controversial, and so they stopped me. Controversial compared to others. I like to advertise for those things I believe in. I like to talk on the radio about the things I believe in. When I tell you I like Clarksville and I like Clayton and I like Northeast Georgia and I like Rome, I really do. I'm not just saying it because I've got affiliates and listeners in those areas. I love those areas of the state. I like to take my family to those areas of the state. When I talk about restaurants I go to, it's not an ad. I just like them. I like to be as authentically here as I am off air. And I'm increasingly learning that a lot of people, the secret to their success is that they play a role on TV or radio, and they're not really that person. I try to be, and maybe I would be a more successful host if I played a character. But I am who I am. I'm 45. I got 2 kids. I got a wife. I'm fat. I live in Middle Georgia. I like to eat. I like to drink bourbon, smoke cigars, and meat. And I like a beer. That's just me. And I like to tell you what I think. And I refuse to be captured by my audience. And there are times that you and I will disagree. There are times that I will say things as a conservative that a lot of people think, well, you can't say that. If you're a Republican, you must really be a rhino. You must really be a Democrat. I have spent many hours within the conservative movement defeating Republicans who were not conservative enough. And I'll be damned if I'm going to lecture people, let people lecture me on my conservatism when most of them didn't even know how to vote before 2016 and only got involved in the process because they were inspired by the president. Good for them. Spare me your lectures on intellectual honesty or intellectual and ideological conviction of what a conservative is when I've been in this movement a very long time. My point there is not to chastise anyone or make myself sound good. It's just I'm not going to tell you what I think I need to tell you for ratings. The number of people who are convinced that my show must be in collapse because I'm saying things they don't want to hear is absurd when I am the host of Evening Drive Time on the largest talk radio station in the country. I would not be there if I was not delivering ratings. And then when you point that out, it says, oh, well, you must be telling people what they want to hear. No, let me give you, if you're at all interested in being successful in radio for the long term, anyone can be successful in the short haul throwing red meat at the crowd. But if you want to sustain yourself and be successful in radio, now that I'm more than a decade in, I feel a little more comfortable giving this advice. And the advice is this. Be yourself. Don't ever tell your audience what you think they want to hear. Tell them what you think. Because if you tell them what you think, you're going to be able to get more depth and more interest and more engagement out of it. And don't be afraid to disagree with your audience. Love your audience and build a relationship with your audience, but don't just tell them what they want to hear. At some point, you got to tell them other stuff. And I realized that I didn't support the president in 2016. I said I would support him in 2020, and it's amazing how quickly people will turn on you, though, when you tell them something you don't want to hear, that, oh, you're just back to hating on the president or what have you. No, my goal is to always tell you exactly what I think, and sometimes you'll hate it, sometimes you won't like it, sometimes you'll get mad and want to turn it off. Sometimes you'll call the station and complain, but I'm never not going to tell you what I think you want to hear. I will always tell you what I believe. And so I'm going to tell you what I believe about impeachment. Having avoided really talking about it yesterday. This is what I believe about impeachment. Next week, President Trump will not be convicted by the United States Senate because they will not get to 67 votes. The media and the Democrats will excoriate Republicans for not supporting impeachment, given what they've seen in the emotional videos and the new closed camera footage that we've seen. The president will have more Republicans vote against him than any other president getting votes from his own party, including Donald Trump in 2020's impeachment. But it won't be enough to convict him. And so I'm not sure why I should care to cover something where I know the outcome is already ordained, and I also know that the lasting impact will be minimal on the Republican Party, despite all the belly aching and emotion of the Democrats. But you really want to know what I think? If the Republicans found out Joe Biden had pardoned someone and Hunter Biden made $1 million off of it in the week before Joe Biden left the White House, you're absolutely right. The Republicans would impeach him and carry on the trial even if he was out of office. The Republican senators are having to hide behind the constitutional argument that you can't impeach a president once he's left office because that's all they've got. That's all they've got is you can't watch the footage and listen to the people and hear what they're saying about their views of the president and why they're there and what they're doing without understanding that, yes, Virginia, Donald Trump did provoke those people to storm the Capitol, and I don't care if that makes you mad. Yes, he did. It wasn't a controversial or even a minority opinion until last month about impeaching and convicting a president out of office, as long as the impeachment happened while in office. Ted Cruz is now even saying, even though he voted that constitutionally you can't impeach the president, he actually put out a writing. While he voted that way, he had a written statement that, yeah, actually you can. I just don't think we should this time. Many of you who are denying that the president provoked January 6th, were all on board the idea that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was 100% responsible for a man attempting to firebomb an ICE facility after she started talking about concentration camps at the border. You want to know what I think? I think that the president should be barred from running for office again because I think he spent 2 months lying about the election and then provoked people to storm the Capitol to try to stop it, thinking that it was a coup afoot. These people went to the Capitol, one of them to their death, believing that she was on the side of righteousness when really she was on the side of bad people. You want to know what I also think? I think Republicans in the Senate agree with me and would vote for him, except they're too scared of you to say it. You want to know what I also think? I think the Democrats are acting morally righteous when you should spare me, because one day they will have a president and behave the exact same way for that president, and they will deny it. They will deny the comparison. They will resent like hell, but deep down they'll know one day they'll do this to their own Trump. You mad at me? You're yelling at your radio? Save your bile and spittle for all the people in Congress, because this is nothing but performance art. It's emotional theater. It's not a real trial. I don't know why I should care about it when clearly the Democrats don't care about it. Now, if you're on the left and that makes you mad, they don't care about it. You know how I know the Democrats don't care about this? This is all emotional theater, and they're trying to score political points. They're not actually trying to convict Donald Trump at this point. They're trying to score political points against the Republicans. Are they subpoenaing Mike Pence as a witness? Nope. The bison helmeted biblical donkey? Nope. The police officers? Nope. A year ago, Chuck Schumer said if you had an impeachment trial without witnesses, it was definitionally a sham. This is Chuck Schumer's sham. Donald Trump and his supporters spent 2 months lying to people about the election, and many of you still believe the lies. He provoked an angry mob. He told them to march to the Capitol, that what they were doing was wrong, and they stormed the Capitol. Some of them went in innocently. Some of them went in maliciously. Overwhelmingly, it was Trump supporters, even as people are screaming that it was Antifa. The Republicans in Washington know it. The senators know it. And they're not going to vote for conviction because they're scared of Trump's voters. Democrats are going to vote for impeachment, but they know the outcome is foreordained, and they're not even trying to change the minds of the senators by calling witnesses and building a stronger case. They're just using the emotional shock value because they know the media will use it to hang it around Republicans' necks and ask difficult questions. If you really care about this, and this is more for the Democrats who may be listening now, if you really cared about this issue, you wouldn't be mad at the Republicans right now. You'd be mad at Chuck Schumer because you'd want him to call witnesses. You'd want Chuck Schumer to call Mike Pence as a witness, but you don't. They're all witnesses. They were there. They lived it. They saw it. No, actually, this is a trial. It may not be in a court of law, but Chuck Schumer said that since it's a trial, to be a fair trial, you need to have witnesses who can be examined and cross-examined, and they're not doing it. This is a sham trial. This is a sham impeachment. The Democrats are making no effort to persuade Republicans to do the right thing. They just want to use it to score political points. And here's the funny thing. A lot of them on the left, a lot of the activists, a lot of the Democrats, a lot of the reporters, a lot of the journalists who are emotionally transfixed and in awe and rapture of what they're seeing and horrified and indignant that the Republicans won't do the right thing. They know deep down that nothing's going to change. And they know deep down that the GOP, which came within 6 seats of taking back the House of Representatives when they were expected to lose 15, they're not going to lose next year. You think, if you're on the left, that this is going to have an emotional impact on people and it's going to persuade people in 2022 to vote Democrat? No, it's not. People's memories are short. People will forget. Yeah, if I were in the Senate, I'd convict. But I'm not. And Chuck Schumer doesn't care. If he did, he'd be having a real trial and witnesses. Those are his own words. So if Chuck Schumer doesn't care, why should I care that a majority of Republicans in the Senate aren't going to convict? if Chuck Schumer's not going to put on a real trial, he's going to compose, in his own words, a sham trial. Why should I care that the GOP's tuned out? Why should I care that Republicans are ready to move on? Why should I care about it? The outcome is already known, and the Democrats are making no effort to persuade. And some of them are saying, well, we just know we're not going to be able to persuade them. Why waste our time and hold up the Senate? We got other stuff to do. Because the Senate of the United States had criminal people trespass in an insurrection and stand there calling for Mike Pence to come to his death. And you can't even have a trial. You don't even want to do a trial. You don't even want to have witnesses. You think this is the worst thing to happen since the British burned down the Capitol? And you're like, oh, well, we got to get back to confirmations. Let's get this over with. We're not going to persuade anyone. No reason to call witnesses. No reason to delve into it. Why should any of us care? The only people who care are the people who are already convinced that the president should be convicted. The only people who care are the Democrats who are outraged. The only people who care are the people who aren't lifted a damn finger to give a real trial. They're ready to move on because, well, we're not going to persuade them. Let's use it against them. Use it against them. It's not going to matter in a year.
News and in-depth analysis from Erick Erickson.
Yeah, I'm getting indignant emails from people that they're outraged that I would say I would convict. It's okay. We can agree to disagree. He's not going to be convicted. It's all a hypothetical anyway. I'm not in the Senate, nor do I have any desire to be there. I do think it's worth noting, however, that the Democrats aren't even trying. I mean, for all the overwrought rhetoric out there right now on this impeachment and what a big deal is. I mean, if you get online, you get on social media right now, you've got all these people who are reporters who are supposed to be objective reporters. Like, I just can't believe the Republicans won't vote. I just can't believe it. Whatever happened, innocent till proven guilty. But more importantly, yes, that is criminal trial. But more importantly, notice how no one wants to point out Chuck Schumer a year ago said it would be a sham impeachment without witnesses. And they don't even want to call witnesses. They want it done by Tuesday. They want to get back to confirmation hearings. They want to get back to COVID relief. They want to get back to all this other stuff. So they're trying to rush it. They're not even trying to mount a case. The House managers are furious that the Senate Democrats won't let them call witnesses. They should be. I actually think it would be. I would actually tune in live if Mike Pence were called as a witness to talk about what it was like. I would absolutely tune in and want to hear that. What was it like? What was your communication with the president? What did he say? The rumor is that the president never even called to check on it. They didn't talk that day at all. But they don't want to do it. So why should we care? So now, for those of you who are mad at me that I haven't spent much time on impeachment, I have spent 12 minutes on impeachment today. It deserves no more time than that. Now I want to talk about a really stupid story. Y'all, I'm not going to watch your Mike Lindell trash documentary about China. If you believe that stuff, you need mental help. I don't mind insulting you. If you think it's real, I'm sorry. I got so many people just like, you're just so insulting to the rest of us. How do you tell someone lovingly you're an idiot? I'm not sure. I sometimes think it's tough love to say if you're looking at that trash and your brain's already rotted, I don't have any sympathy for you. I'm not going to convince you. You're not worth my time. Please stop sending me links to tell me to look at the Mike Lindell video. I also think it's stupid that David Hogg, have you heard about this kid? He's the gun control activist. He was at the Parkland shooting, and he's dedicated his life now to gun control. He's super woke and not very bright, and he wants to start a pillow company to challenge Mike Lindell's My Pillow. I forget what the name of their pillow company is. I'm surprised they didn't go with Woke Pillow. Sleep Woke. Or Wake Up Woke. Or Woke. I mean, the kid is totally into wokeness. He makes no sense. He has no sense of history. And now he's trying to find a unionized pillow manufacturer in the United States to compete with My Pillow. Why? My Pillow is a trash product to begin with. Why do you want to compete with it? Sorry, it's really not a good pillow. I like My Pillow. And My Pillow, it ain't one of those. It's not going to be ever. Hello there, it's Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I gotta spend some time here on this John McWhorter piece. I don't know John McWhorter. He is on the left, but he is black, he is on the left, and he's raising all sorts of issues about wokeism. And he has a book coming out. And it's about neo-racists being anti-racists. Let me read you. This is the preface. His book is The Elect. Neo-racists posing as anti-racists and their threat to a progressive America, and essentially claiming that wokeism is a very bad religion. I'm not one for long introductions. I like to get to the point. However, before we begin, I would like to give the reader a sense of the trajectory of these installments, what kind of statements they're intended to make. This is the intro to a preface to his new book. The book is not a call for people of a certain ideology to open up to the value of an open market of ideas, to understand the value of robust discussion, and to see the folly of defenestrating people for disagreeing with them. My assumption is that the people in question are largely unreachable by arguments of any kind. Rather, I aim to illuminate where these people are coming from, how their ideology and behavior is quite coherent in itself, and what the rest of us can do to live with grace and honesty as people concerned with the state of the world, who nevertheless must grapple with obstacles laid in our path by people who see their religion as an ultimate wisdom. My aims will be, 1, to argue that this new ideology is actually a religion in all but name. 2, to argue that to understand it as a religion is to see coherence in what may seem like a welter of crazy or overblown behaviors. 3, to explore why this religion is so attractive to so many people. 4, to show that the religion is actively harmful to black people despite being intended as unprecedentedly anti-racist. 5, to show that a pragmatic, effective, liberal, and even democratic-friendly agenda for rescuing black America need not be founded on the tenets of this new religion. And 6, to suggest ways to lessen the grip of this new religion on our public culture. I hope my observations will serve as one of many contributions to our debate over what constitutes social justice. As I write this in the summer of 2020, Allison Roman, a food writer for the New York Times, is on suspension. You might wonder just what a food writer could do to end up temporarily dismissed by her employer. Roman's sin, in an interview, she passingly criticized two people for commercialism, model and food writer Chrissy Teigen and lifestyle coach Marie Kondo. Roman was Twitter mobbed for having the nerve as a white woman to criticize two women of color. Teigen is half white, half Thai. Kondo is Japanese. Neither of them are what we typically think of as people of color in the sense of historically conditioned and structurally preserved disadvantage. However, in 2020, the mere fact of a white person criticizing not just one but two, apparently the plurality tipped the scales, non-white persons justified being shamed on social media and disallowed from doing her work. Roman, as a white person, was supposedly punching down at two people who were very wealthy, very successful, and vastly better known than her. Her whiteness trumped all, we were told. Roman, now typical of such cases, ate crow with an apologetic statement about how she was reflective and realized her error. Teigen even stated that she did not think Roman deserved to be sanctioned, but no matter, third wave anti-racist fury now has a supreme power in our public moral evaluations, and this meant that Roman be pilloried in the town square. Her Wikipedia entry will forever include a notice that she was deemed a racist, billboard style, despite that most Americans likely see that she did nothing that remotely deserved such treatment, and despite that she would not have been treated that way as recently as a few years before. What kind of people did this? Are we going to let them continue? The same year, Leslie Neal Boylan lasted only a few months as Dean of Nursing at the University of Massachusetts, Lowell. The problem was that in the wake of statements nationwide after the murder of by police officers of George Floyd, Dean Neal Boylan had the audacity to pin this blinkered, bigoted screed to her colleagues and staff. I'm writing to express my concern and condemnation of the recent and past acts of violence against people of color. Recent events recall a tragic history of racism and bias that continue to thrive in this country. I despair for our future as a nation if we do not stand up against violence against anyone. Black lives matter, but also everyone's life matters. No one should have to live in fear that they will be targeted for how they look or what they believe. A certain crowd decided to read Dean Neil Boylan as chiming in with those who resist the slogan Black Lives Matter by answering that all lives matter, as if BLM is somehow claiming that Black lives matter more. However, one could only read Neil Boylan as meaning this via not reading well. She started out by acknowledging a tragic history of racism and bias. And no, she didn't mean that it only existed in the past and that black people need to get over it, because she wrote that the racism and bias continue to thrive in this country. However, because her composition included the three words, everyone's lives matter, she was reported to her superiors and quickly out of a job without even being allowed to defend herself. Why was Dean Leslie Neil Boylan's email deemed as a missive from someone unfit to supervise people dedicated to healing and giving comfort? A child would wonder why, as would a time traveler from as recently as 2015. But her detractors were deemed authoritative. In the same year of 2020, a data analyst at a progressive consulting firm named David Shore lost his job. He had tweeted a study by a black Ivy League political science professor, Omar Wasow, showing that violent black protests during the long hot summers of the late 1960s were more likely than nonviolent ones to make local voters vote Republican. Shore's intent was not to praise this, but to disseminate the facts themselves as a glum announcement, which had been covered eagerly by liberal media shortly beforehand. Certain parties on Twitter, though, didn't like a white man tweeting something that could be taken as criticizing black protest in the wake of George Floyd's murder. The consulting firm expelled him. All of these cases occurred because of the influence of a frame of mind we term a viewpoint, but has actually become a religion. This is third-wave anti-racism, more often termed social justice warriors or the woke mob. One can divide anti-racism into three waves along the lines that feminists have been. First-wave anti-racism battled slavery and legalized segregation. Second-wave anti-racism in the 70s and 80s battled racist attitude and thought, and taught America that being racist was a flaw. Third-wave anti-racism, becoming mainstream in the 2010s, teaches that because racism is baked into the structure of society, whites complicitly in living within it constitute racism itself. For while black people grappling with the racism surrounding them is the totality of experience and must condition exquisite sensitivity towards them, including a suspension of standards of achievement and conduct. Under this paradigm, all deemed insufficiently aware of this sense of existing while white as eternal culpability require bitter condemnation and ostracization to an obsessive, abstract degree that leaves most observers working to make real sense of it, makes people left of center wonder just when and why they started being classified as backwards, and leaves millions of innocent people scared to pieces of winding up in the sights of a zealous brand of inquisition that seems to hover almost any statement, ambition, or achievement in modern society. He then goes on to compare it to the Stalinist kangaroo courts. It is a religion, he says, and I think it is a religion. Dylan Byers at NBC News, he's the senior media reporter for NBC News, notes New York Times columnist Brett Stevens says that the publisher, A.G. Schultzberger, has spiked his column that was supposed to run on Monday morning, in which he took issue with the way the New York Times handled Donald McNeil. Donald McNeil has created chaos inside the New York Times. Stevens took issue with the fact that the New York Times executive editor Dean Baquet said, "We don't tolerate racist language regardless of intent. Do any of us want to live in a world or work in a field where intent is categorically ruled out as a mitigating factor?" he asked. I hope not. Brett Stevens went on in his column, which is never going to see the light of day, to cite a famous Lee Atwater quote that used racist slur, in which the New York Times has cited at least 7 times, and wanted to know if that was now a scandal. In an email to colleagues today, Brett Stevens wrote, "I wrote the following column on Monday morning. If you're wondering why it wasn't in the paper, it's because Schultzberger spiked it." In a meeting just now, Baquet said, "In our zeal to make a powerful statement about our workplace culture, we ham-handedly said something that some of you saw as threatening to our journalism. Of course, intent matters, when we're talking about language and journalism. So it appears that the New York Times leadership actually agrees with Bret Stephens' column, but won't run the column because maybe they didn't want him addressing something in print they were getting ready to walk back. Now, what is this all about? A man who works for the New York Times, Donald McNeil, is a 45-year veteran of the paper. McNeil has been booted out because he was on a trip with high schoolers in Peru in 2019. It was a Times-sponsored student journey. After the trip, the New York Times became aware of complaints from a number of students and their parents. The complaints ranged from concerns about how McNeil discussed race and other sensitive cultural issues to behavior during ceremonies the group was invited to attend with indigenous shaman, to a generally dismissive and prickly manner. But the most serious complaint of all was that McNeil had at one point used the most heinous of racial slurs for black people. The Times commenced an investigation. And it turns out that McNeil did not casually use the N-word. Someone else was accused of using the N-word, and McNeil sought to investigate whether it happened to administer disciplinary action. And in the process of investigating if someone had used the N-word, McNeil used the N-word to ask if someone had used that word. And upon confirmation that the person had used that word, that person was disciplined. The wokes at the New York Times are upset that McNeil used the word at all to find out if someone had used the word. Does this make any sense at all? This is insane. The Daily Beast published a damning article about McNeil's 2019 Peru trip on January 28th. Reporters to the Beast had spoken to multiple parents of students on the trip. They published some of the students' complaints verbatim. Quote, "I would change the journalist. He was a racist." They even got their hands on emails between members of the Times corporate communications department. The article included a statement from a Times spokesperson saying the company had conducted a thorough investigation and disciplined Donald McNeil. "We found he used bad judgment by repeating a racist slur in the context of a conversation about racist language. It did not appear that McNeil's intentions were hateful or malicious, and yet he had to be disciplined." Now, here's the thing. What's happening at the New York Times is that they have been held hostage by the wokes. They decided to go down the 1619 Project Road and make Hannah Nicole Jones a near fabulist who rewrote American history and then changed her opinions on whether she was rewriting it or not. She's the arbiter of all. And she is decidedly woke and leftist. And this white man used the N-word to someone to confirm that someone else had actually used it so that that person could be disciplined. But it was too much and out of bounds that a white man uttered the word while making inquiries on whether or not the word had been used. So he must be punished for daring to utter the N-word, not as a pejorative, not maliciously, but only to ask if someone had heard other people use that word so that they could be punished. And now he's punished for his investigation. None of it should make any sense to you because it doesn't make any sense. What it is a religion, and this gets back to McWhorter's piece. This is a religion. It is a religious faith. It has a creation myth that all of today's problems with race trace to the first Africans being brought to our shores in 1619, and the Revolutionary War was fought over slavery, despite leading historians noting the inaccuracy of the historic premise. There is what we could think of as a triple testament tome consisting of Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, and Ibram Kendi's How to Be Anti-Racist. The box set of the three would take its place on coffee tables and mantelpieces nationwide, particularly in white households. And third wave racism is, like Mormonism, a successful creed, quite compellingly evangelical. Its adherents make Americans more religious by the year, and this possibly includes you. You may wonder what it's like to be a devout Christian. Work like that of anthropologist T.H. Lerman takes us a long way to some sense to answer, but we also need look no further than the kind of double talk we pretend to accept as wisdom on race to know what it's like to be religious. One does not have to explicitly title oneself religious to merit the description. Until the 16th and 17th century, Europeans who believed fervently in God, Jesus, and his resurrection, angels, Satan, and miracles, did not think of themselves as religious, but as ordinary. Only with scientific progress, encounters with other people of the world with radically different beliefs, and the demystifying aspects of the Reformation, did there emerge a sense that adherence to a certain set of Christian tenets was religious as opposed to empirical. Third wave anti-racism forces us to think like people of the Dark and Middle Ages without knowing it. It's scary, it's unfair, it's regressive, it's plain wrong. And yet these people are increasingly wielding influence. The only way to fight this is to not engage with them, to ignore them, to laugh at them. And that enrages them further, and they've gotten captive within corporate America now. Corporate America adheres to so much of their philosophies. Corporate America is scared of them. They're bullies. They're bullies. And if you want to get rid of wokeism, you've got to just not play along with it. But too many people are, and the New York Times has now been captive by the wokes who got a man fired because he wanted to purge a racist and punish a racist, but had to use the word to see if it was used by that guy. More and more. I mean, the New York Times, the wokes got Tom Cotton's op-ed, got people fired because Cotton said you should use the National Guard to quell the violence in the country. And then the New York Times supports using the National Guard to quell the violence in the country as long as it was from Trump supporters at the Capitol. It's a religion we're going to be dealing with, and it is a religion that, much like Islamic fundamentalists, is willing to destroy lives. They stop at death. They're not yet willing to kill the bad people like the Islamic fundamentalists are. They just want to ruin their lives.
You can follow Erick around social media.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson. Remember, if you are in charge of a business or the finances of a business, you can go to First Liberty Building and Loan at firstlibertyga.com and talk to them, spend 5 minutes with them, and see if they're a good fit for you. If you're tired of banks telling you no and you need to grow, go to firstlibertyga.com. If you want to advertise on the program, let us know. And I just want to welcome again the folks down at WVOP in Vidalia, as we're continuing to grow around the state. I at some point I have this in my head, grand tour of the affiliates that I want to do. I just think it'd be fun. There's so many neat parts of the state that I rarely get to go to. But being in Macon, I'm kind of in the middle of everywhere, so it's time to go, and I want to do that. Now, we've talked about religion, but Peloton, so I've had several people tell me, you should get a Peloton. I've actually, I like to walk. I don't know that I don't know that I want to sit on one of those bike seats. I'm kind of a guy, and I'm those seats. I think I've read Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible. I'm worried about those seats. If you let the listener understand, nope, it doesn't look comfortable to me at all. I got a lot of friends who are cyclists, though, but their treadmills are kind of cool. But it is becoming a cult. People are looking to exercise and things like this as some sort of religious experience. And a woman was in a Peloton Facebook group, 34 years old, and she just wanted to know if it was possible for there to be workouts with some of the Christian music that she listens to. She listens to Christmas music. And all hell broke loose in the forum. How dare her suggest Christian music? She didn't mean anything by it, but these Peloton cultists were enraged that a Christian might suggest, instead of working out to rap, rock, R&B, pop music, 80s or 70s, how about some Christian music too? No! Can't have that. Here's this thing. One of the things that's happening in culture, and this gets back to wokeism as well, is that people are trying to find God everywhere but the Bible, where he actually is. You want to hear God speaking to you? Read the Bible. That's actually the word of God. But people want to go they want to have an experiential relationship with God. Go to church. But that's not what they're looking for. That they want their own God,
30.
Not the actual one. And they're trying to find that through experience that makes them feel fulfilled. Well, and their fulfillment is all about them and making themselves feel good, not actually sanctification and the glorification of God. And more and more people being led astray into strange cults, including one where you hop a bike every day and ride it for an hour, and then your backside hurts.